What's up, everybody? Welcome back for some more MMA DFS picks and lineup advice. FanDuel, DraftKings. We're here. UFC Vegas 66. Jared Cannonier, Sean Strickland. Everything you need to be profitable on Saturday's final UFC card of the year. I cannot believe it. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jake the Snake, owner of MMADFS.com. Jake, man, we've been doing these videos all year. We were just talking right before we started going live. I cannot believe that this is the final card of the year. It's flown by.
Dude, I know, man. It feels like it's gone so fast, but here we are. So let's go out with a bang.
And a nice little 3-4 week break after this, right? That's much appreciated.
Yep. Get to catch up on life a little bit briefly, and then we dive right back into next year.
Go out and see the sun for a little bit and
Seriously.
get some exercise. So, all right. So, what we do in these videos, if you're new here, first of all, welcome. What we do is we break down the main event from a betting and DFS perspective. We talk about any newcomers that are making their UFC debut, their fighting styles, what we can expect for them in their first walk to the octagon. We'll play good fighter, good matchup, bad matchup. Fighters that have less than 4 UFC fights under their belt. Give some context to their stats. That way, if you're just game log watching, clicking through their name, looking at their fights, we'll give you a little more context to those fights. And then we see the Prize Picks promo here on screen. Use promo code OCCUPY to get a 100% deposit match bonus. We'll give our favorite Prize Picks play of the card. A fight that you have to target in DFS. Whoever wins is likely to score very well. And then we'll close it out with our final stream parlay of the year. I'll pick a bet. Jake will pick a bet. We'll parlay it together. And we'll drive off to the sunset in Lambos. So, Jake, let's jump into it. Cannonier, Strickland, final 5-round fight of the year. What does it look like from both a betting and DFS perspective?
Yeah. So man, both these guys are coming off of losses to the guys that just fought for the title. You've got Strickland coming off the loss to Alex Pereira, 31 years old, high volume striker. Has the ability to score well through striking volume alone. Typically chooses not to wrestle. I'm sure if you asked him, he would tell you that wrestling's for pussies. But that's Sean Strickland in a nutshell right there. So opted not to wrestle with Alex Pereira. I would be surprised if he if he tried to wrestle here with Cannonier. And the thing about Cannonier is he has a 65% career takedown defense, but since dropping down to 185, that's gone up to 82%. The guy's an absolute tank. Even if Strickland wanted to wrestle, I don't think it would happen. So from Strickland's perspective, pure striker, I don't think he's going to finish Cannonier either. Former heavyweight guy has been rock solid since dropping down to 185. So I think it's pretty straightforward on Strickland's side. He's looking at a high striking volume decision. That's how he wins. That's how he scores well. Not the easiest guy to put up a huge striking number against with Cannonier. Guy hits like a truck, only averages 3.5 significant strikes absorbed per minute. So I mean, definitely not an easy guy to just sit there like like a Jack Hermanson, for example, where you can just put up a massive striking total. So I think that's going to be a little bit trickier on Strickland's side of things to really score well just based on his opponent. And then Cannonier's side, his lower price tag keeps him a little bit more in play, but he's a low volume guy. He doesn't really mix in many takedowns. So it's going to be hard for him to really score well unless he gets an early knockout. And we've seen, his later round knockouts still kind of struggle to really break 100 points. Generally, they don't put up big scores. And maybe at his cheap price tag, he can still be a value play. But I would say he almost needs a round one knockout here to really score well and secure a spot in the winning high risk lineup. So I would say both guys I'm not in love with just based on kind of their outlook. But from a low risk perspective, I think I'm still stacking it on DraftKings. Based on Strickland's volume they're both pretty durable, so we should see it go longer. They should score pretty decently, the combined score. And even if we did get like an early knockout for Cannonier, then he would score well. And, as a dog, I think that's probably going to be enough for low risk. But it's not my absolute favorite low risk week, but I still think it's good enough to play low risk. It's good enough to get there in a stack. And, I feel better about playing them in low risk than I am excited about playing them in high risk, I think.
All right. Question. I like this new question I've been asking you, but you have 3 options for your 150 entries tomorrow. It is fade this fight entirely, it is play 100% Strickland, or it's play 100% Cannonier.
Yeah, I'm going to fade it entirely in that scenario.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to the newcomer on the card. Is a short notice replacement. It's in, let's see here, against Amir Albazi. Somehow it made it to the main card because of Albazi's placement earlier, but it's against Costa here, and Costa making his debut. If I can find the damn fight on DraftKings, here it is. Alessandro Costa making his debut. Jake, what can you tell me about him?
Yeah, so he went on Contender Series last July, fought to a split decision. It was pretty low volume, not super exciting. Unsurprisingly, he did not get the UFC contract. Went back to the Mexican regional scene, landed a 12-second knockout. I'm sure that got him on the short list. So, Albazi had originally been scheduled to fight Alex Perez. Perez drops out. Brandon Royval comes in. Royval breaks his wrist. Costa stepped into this fight. I believe it was announced November 22nd. So he hasn't had a ton of time to prepare, but still a young guy, 26 years old. I'm sure he's staying ready for the most part, but you never know. I mean, it's not like I wouldn't call it short notice, but it's shorter notice. But I would say he's a power puncher. He's a BJJ black belt, so the guy can grapple. He's got a decent number of submission wins on his record. He likes to get on top and go for quick arm bars, but he hasn't faced anyone like Albazi. So, I mean, it's hard to know how he's going to hold up at this level. Guy making his UFC debut. I mean, black belt or not, I think he's going to have a tough time with Albazi, but he's got power. He's got grappling. Not high enough volume for me to get really excited about him in DFS, and not like a super. He doesn't really go after grappling that much. Like, he's more so looking for knockouts, but he will occasionally. So I don't know. When I watched his Contender Series fight, I was like, all right, well, this guy doesn't excite me at all. And then I kind of watched some of his other fights. I was like, all right, well, he's got some power in his hands, but kind of a smaller guy, kind of like a little bit stockier, shorter arms. I don't know. I could see him struggling in the UFC, maybe knocking out some lower level opponents, but I think he's gonna have a tougher time with higher level guys.
Like Albazi on Saturday. So, and Jake Costa coming from the Lux Fighting League, who infamously sent Eric Silva to us last week. I'm not saying Lux is equivalent to the Alaskan regional scene, but we get one more performance like last week, and it'll be right up there with it.
Right.
So, all right, moving on. Good fighter, bad fighter, bad matchup, or good fighter, bad fighter, good matchup, bad matchup. Fighters with less than 4 UFC fights under the belt. Give some context to these fights, and we'll start with the earliest fights to the latest fights on the night. And Jake, the first one is the 11th fight, fight number 11, Rinat Fakhretdinov.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. He's like a Russian wrestler, so he's like a decent wrestler. But I think right now, I'm not going to call him a good fighter yet because I still have questions about his cardio. He hasn't been very active. He's rarely been to a third round. I feel like I was telling you, he just barely outlasted Andreas Michailidis in terms of cardio in his last fight, which was a little bit concerning for me. So I don't want to call this guy a good fighter and then have him gas out and get subbed here in the second round. So I'm going to say, best case scenario, the jury's still out on him. But from a DFS perspective, he's got good upside because the guy just goes for nonstop takedowns. So like he's a good DFS play. And it's kind of a wild card matchup because we have Brian Battle who dropped down from 185 to 170 for his last fight. And that fight lasted 44 seconds before he landed a head kick KO to Takashi Sato. So we have no idea how Battle is going to look at the new weight class in terms of cardio, in terms of durability, just in terms of speed, just everything. So, I mean, Brian's a complete wild card, but I would say if we only look at his 185 stuff, then it's not a great matchup because we've seen him go against other grapplers and come out ahead. We saw him on The Ultimate Fighter land a second round submission against Petrosky. So, I mean, the guy's shown he can go up against grapplers and win. So I don't think we can call it a good matchup from that perspective.
What about the flip side? Is Battle good, and is Fakhretdinov a good matchup for him?
Man, this is a tricky fight because, like, Battle, he's one of these guys, like, I feel like you want to say he's not good, but he keeps winning and he
Right.
keeps finishing guys. So he's kind of like what is he? I don't know. He's kind of one of these guys who's like a sleeper dude where he doesn't look like, at least at 185, he always looked overweight. Maybe I'm sure that's why he cut down to 170, but he just finds ways to win. So I'm still calling both these guys bad fighters, and I think it's a good matchup from the perspective that they're both kind of bad fighters. So, like Fakhretdinov could land a ton of takedowns, or he could gas out and Battle could finish him. So I think that it's a high upside matchup from both perspectives.
Okay, moving on. We got Mahashate making his second UFC fight, and absolutely just still in my nightmares from that first round KO of Steve Garcia back in June. But is he good? Is he bad? And is this a good or bad matchup versus Garcia?
Yeah, so he's a one-dimensional striker. So he's good at striking, but he's terrible at grappling, and he's going against a grappler. So, I'm going to call well-rounded guys good and one-dimensional people generally bad. So from that perspective, I still think he's not well-rounded, and he's going to get torn up by wrestlers. So I think from that perspective, he's a bad fighter in a bad matchup.
Time for the actual good Garcia to take advantage of this matchup in Rafa on Saturday. All right, we got Sayukeb Kakramanov.
Yeah, man, Kakramanov is a good fighter. This is a tough matchup, man. Saeed Nurmagomedov. You think I could say that name by now, right? He's tough, man. This is a really tough matchup for both guys. So I think Kakramanov is the real deal. I think the guy's legit. I think he's really good. I think it's a bad matchup.
To be fair, and maybe we're the minority here, but the last matchup against Ronnie Lawrence was perceived to be pretty tough, and he went out there and absolutely freight trained Ronnie Lawrence. So curious to see what he does here against Nurmagomedov. All right.
Me too. Me too.
Right. Okay. So moving on down, we got formerly Cheyenne Buys, now Cheyenne Vlismas. Is she good or bad?
Man, that's another one-dimensional fighter. She's a one-dimensional striker going against the one-dimensional grappler. So you have to say like, yeah, she's good at striking and she's bad at grappling. So overall, not a well-rounded fighter. So I would call her bad, and I would say it's a bad matchup because McKenna's a grappler who's going to be looking to take her down, and that's her weakness is grappling.
So McKenna is also a bad fighter, but this is a good matchup.
Yeah, I would say so, man. I mean, just because McKenna's not a very good striker, and she's not the best wrestler by any means. I mean, she's got the T-Rex arms. She's absolutely tiny, which, it's harder to take people down when you're a hobbit. But yeah, so I think she needs to work on her striking still. I think she needs to improve sort of her fight IQ. I mean, we saw in that London card with Elise Reed, where we're all just like pulling our hair out, where she's not landing the takedown she needs to until, it was too late, basically. So I mean, we could see this go like that, but I think Cheyenne's gonna push forward more than Elise Reed did, but we'll see. I mean, it's possible she stays on the outside, but she's a crazy aggressive person, so I think that plays into McKenna's hand. So I think it's a good matchup for McKenna, and I'm not ready to call McKenna a good fighter though.
Hopefully, you watched McKenna's last fight at least 30 times. Be ahead of Vlismas, who said she watched it 30 times. So do your homework, Jake. All right, moving on. We got Cody Brundage against Oleg Shazuk. Cody Brundage, two big wins against Gore and Lungiambula in his last two fights. Thoughts?
It literally feels like all of these fights are the same. They're all one-dimensional fighters going against the opposite one-dimensional
Yeah.
fighters. So Cody Brundage, pretty one-dimensional wrestler. I know he knocked out Trayshawn Gore, but if you talk to Trayshawn Gore, he didn't have any liquid around his brain for that fight. So one-dimensional wrestler that I would say he's still super green, and he's not a good fighter, and he's going against a one-dimensional striker. So I mean, it's kind of a bad matchup for both guys because old Jacek will absolutely murder him on the feet. And if Brundage gets it to the mat, then he's going to dominate on the mat. So he's a bad fighter and a good matchup.
Fair enough. And finally, Costa's opponent, Amir Albazi. I think we can agree he's good. How good is he, do you think?
Yeah, no, he's definitely good. He's actually well rounded. I think the book is still out on him a little bit just because you look at who he's faced. Like we haven't really. I mean, he's not facing anyone here for the record, but we haven't seen him like beat any signature wins. So I think he's good, and this is a good matchup from the perspective that it's a UFC newcomer. He took it on relatively short notice. We don't really know how good Costa's defensive grappling is because we've seen him grapple offensively. We've seen him go for submissions, but he hasn't really spent much time on his back at all. So we're going to learn a lot about Costa here, but he is a BJJ black belt. So it's not like Albazi is not one of these guys that's facing a one-dimensional striker where he can just own him on the mat. I mean, theoretically, Costa can grapple some, but yeah, I think you have to call it a good fighter and a good matchup based on the narrative and circumstances.
It's always theoretically with someone making their UFC debut. In the past, on tape, on paper, in theory, they can do this, but let's see what happens when it comes to the big show. So,
right.
all right, you see the promo code on screen. Prize Picks get a 100% deposit match bonus when you use promo code Occupy today, up to $100. Use some of Jake's picks. Parlay UFC props, all kinds of sport props you can parlay together. Some really soft lines in some markets. I think UFC would qualify there, Jake. So looking today, what was some of your favorite bets, or which one stood out to you as a soft line on Prize Picks?
Yes, I like Garcia over 2.5 takedowns. As long as he doesn't get knocked out, fingers crossed. I think we're definitely hitting that number. I mean, get knocked out or land an immediate submission win on his first takedown. But the guy's been to like 6 decisions in his last 7 fights or something. I think 2.5 takedowns is a solid number for him.
Totally fair. All right. Let's see here. Real quick, if you're not subscribed to the channel, do make sure you are. We do these UFC videos every Friday when there are 12 or more cards or 12 or more fights on the card. When it's a pay-per-view, we move it to Saturday for live Q&A. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, get notified when we go live, upload these videos. If you like it at this point, give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. All right, Jake, moving on to a fight that you have to target in DFS. Whoever wins is likely to score very well. Uh, it feels like there's a lot of fights on this card like that because of those matchup differences that you pointed out. But if you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
Yeah, there really are multiple, but so I really like the Olajaychik, Cody Brundage one, man. I really think we're either going to see McCannell land a first round knockout, and if he doesn't, I think he's going to slow down. I think Brundage can take over and score well as the dog in that scenario.
Fair enough. All right, let's close out the show with our stream parlay of the week. I'll pick a bet. Jake will pick a bet. We'll parlay it together. We got hot here towards the end of the year, so if you want to tail, I encourage you to do so. Jake puts out his best bets throughout the week over at MMADFS.com. Important you go check that out because the lines move, and you want to get ahead of those line movements. Gives you the best places to make those bets. So go check it out, MMADFS.com. End of the week on Fridays, he posted in the Daily Plug, which is at OccupyFantasy.com. In addition to his favorite fighters to target in DFS, in addition to lineup construction tips, and in addition to the best prize picks plays, he also puts his best bets where the lines are still available. So if you're into betting, make sure you check out all of that content. Jake, for this one, the model agrees, you agree, and I think Alex Caceres to win this fight overall, I think is a good bet on the money line. But for this stream parlay in particular, I'm going to take Alex Caceres, his decision prop, which is plus 310 or so. Am I right?
Yeah, plus 310, man. Yeah, I like that one. I think this is a good matchup for Caceres.
Okay, so I'll take the
Yeah.
Caceres side, and who are you going to pair it up with?
Let's let's end the year with some style here. Let's go big or go home. I'm gonna go with Journey Newson wins by submission at plus 2200. So that'll get us up to plus 93.30. So a nice little 93, 94 to 1 parlay to close out the year. Why not?
You guys interested in a 94 to 1 parlay? Well, we're going to do it here. And Jake's showing no fear. Journey Newsom, whose 4 UFC fights have been overturned, decision, knockout KO, decision. No subs in those 4 fights, but for this one, it's 22 to 1. Very good bet. And we're going to parlay it together with Alex Caceres, 96 to 1. Everyone will get great holiday gifts if we hit that. So, Jake, final thoughts on the new year. Just really quickly, I will say, as we have more people here watching the end of the show, the year-end finale on DraftKings is the lowest prize pool it's been since COVID and the increased prize pools for UFC on DraftKings. Lowest prize pool, variety of reasons this is happening. If you enjoy MMA DFS, if you enjoy the biggest prize pools, reach out to support. If you have a host, great. If you don't, if you're like most people, you don't have a host, reach out to customer support. Let them know you want bigger prizes. Let them know your thoughts on late swap. Even if you like it, just let them know. The fact that we need to overwhelm customer support, we don't want this sport to die. We all love it. Jake, I'm sure you echo those same sentiments.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've staked my livelihood on this sport, so I would say I'm as hooked on it as anyone. So yeah, I mean, let's all tell DraftKings, man, make them bigger, and tell them what you think about late swap, live swap. Tell them what you think about late swap. Let's get the contest back up to 100K for the first January card. I mean, let's just hope that it was the NFL being on Saturday that dragged it down. Obviously, there was a variety of factors, but I think MMA will be all right, man. I think that DraftKings is going to come around, come to their senses. I mean, realize that the majority of their customer base is not a fan of late swap, that they can fill up these contests. I think we're going to get bigger contests in 2023. We just got to stay on it, man. And, as long as we keep posting content, we keep getting people watching. I mean, I think that'll keep people, interested. And, let's keep winning some money in 2023. Like, we've had 2 great years. Let's keep it rolling next year.
Very well said. I couldn't have said it any better myself. So before we get out here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out Jake's work at MMADFS.com. Check out our work at OccupyFantasy.com. If you want to come sweat the fights with us, we'd love to have you. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. Join our Discord server. Come chat it up with us. So Jake at DFS_MMA. Jake, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff, brother. Have a good card on Saturday. I'll be talking to everyone out there. We appreciate you listening throughout the entire year. And if you're not following for NFL or NBA or any of those other sports, just UFC, we'll see you in January.